In the quiet suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, a young woman's dream of starting a new life would soon turn into a nightmare that would captivate the nation for years to come. This is the chilling story of Morgan Bauer, a 19-year-old from South Dakota who vanished without a trace in February 2016. Morgan was like many young adults, filled with hope and ambition. She had recently moved from her hometown in South Dakota to the bustling city of Atlanta, seeking new opportunities and experiences. With limited funds, but boundless determination, she secured a job as a dancer at a club in Gainesville, ready to make her mark on the world. But fate had other plans for Morgan. On February 25, 2016, she arrived for her shift at the top of Gainesville Club, unaware that it would be the last time her colleagues would see her alive. As the night wore on and the club's neon lights flickered, Morgan's future was about to take a dark turn. After her shift ended, Morgan left the club with a co-worker and the co-worker's boyfriend. They dropped her off at a Citgo gas station on US Highway 278 in Covington, Georgia. Security footage captured Morgan getting into a green Eclipse with an unknown driver. This seemingly innocuous moment would be the last confirmed sighting of Morgan Bauer. The following day, February 26th, Morgan posted a video on Instagram. In the footage, she can be seen walking in what appears to be a park, with an unidentified man visible in the background. This haunting video would become the final digital footprint of a young woman whose life was about to be cruelly cut short. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Morgan's family and friends grew increasingly desperate for answers. The vibrant, ambitious young woman who had embarked on a new adventure had simply vanished into thin air. Law enforcement launched an investigation, but leads were scarce, and the case soon went cold. For 7 long years, Morgan's disappearance remained a mystery, her fate unknown. But in the summer of 2023, a breakthrough would finally come that would shock investigators and the public alike. July 27, 2023, the FBI and multiple police agencies descended upon a property in Georgia, less than a mile from where Morgan's last Instagram video was taken. The air was thick with tension as investigators, armed with a search warrant based on what they called credible information and evidence, combed through the area.
Search warrant, currently executing a search warrant. It's part of an ongoing investigation into missing person Morgan Bauer. Porterdale officers are conducting an investigation at the request for assistance by the Atlanta Police Department. So far, the search has located items of evidentiary interest, and the search is being conducted with assistance of the following agencies or departments: the Atlanta Police, the Peoria, Illinois Police, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Newton County Sheriff's Office, and the Newton County District Attorney's Office.
But it wasn't until August 5th, 2023, that the case took a dramatic turn. The City of Porterdale Police Department announced the arrests of 2 individuals in connection with Morgan's disappearance. Caitlin Goebel was apprehended in Peoria, Illinois, facing charges of concealing a death and tampering with evidence. However, it was the arrest of Jonathan Alexander Warren in Los Angeles, California, that sent shockwaves through the investigation. Warren was charged with murder, aggravated assault, concealing a death, and tampering with evidence. The gravity of these charges hinted at the horrific fate that had befallen young Morgan Bauer. As the investigation progressed, the true extent of the horror began to unfold. In October 2023, a new and deeply disturbing charge was added to Warren's indictment. Prosecutors alleged that Warren had performed sexual acts on Morgan's deceased body, leading to an additional charge of necrophilia. The arrests and subsequent charges painted a grim picture of Morgan's final moments. Investigators believe that sometime after her last Instagram post, Morgan encountered Warren. What transpired next was a nightmare beyond imagination. The young woman who had come to Atlanta, full of hope and dreams, had fallen victim to a predator. As the case moved towards trial, the community rallied around Morgan's family. Vigils were held, and social media campaigns kept her memory alive. The case had not only devastated a family, but had also shaken the sense of security in the area. On January 11, 2024, justice finally arrived for Morgan Bauer. In a Newton County Superior Court, Jonathan Alexander Warren, now 33, entered a non-negotiated guilty plea to charges of malice murder, tampering with evidence, concealing the death of another, and necrophilia. The courtroom was silent as the judge sentenced Warren to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, Morgan's family and friends, who had endured years of agonizing uncertainty, finally had a measure of closure. But the pain of their loss would never truly fade. In the wake of the trial, Morgan's mother, Sherry Keenan, who had tirelessly advocated for her daughter for years, spoke to the media. Her voice trembling with emotion, she said, "Morgan was full of life and love. She came to Atlanta to chase her dreams, not to have them brutally stolen from her. While this verdict brings some closure, it doesn't bring back our beautiful girl." As for Caitlin Goebel, her case was still pending at the time of Warren's sentencing. The extent of her involvement in Morgan's death and the subsequent cover-up remained a subject of ongoing legal proceedings. The green Eclipse that Morgan was last seen entering at the Citgo gas station was never found, leaving some questions unanswered. Investigators speculated that the vehicle might have been disposed of or hidden in the aftermath of the crime. In the years following Morgan's disappearance, the Yellow River Park, where her last Instagram video was believed to have been filmed, became a place of remembrance. A small memorial, adorned with flowers and photos, served as a testament to the young life lost and a reminder of the enduring impact of her story. Morgan Bauer may have been silenced, but her story continues to speak volumes, urging us all to look out for one another and to cherish the precious gift of life. Rest in peace, and may the grieving family find solace. Tara Louise Baker, a promising second-semester student at the University of Georgia School of Law, was found dead in her burning home on January 19, 2001, the day before her 24th birthday. The circumstances surrounding her death would baffle investigators for over 2 decades, leaving a family in anguish and a community searching for answers. Tara was more than just another face in the crowd. Born on January 20th, 1977, she was described as a Southern belle with an old soul, someone who had a knack for making others feel special. Her compassion for the underdog and her academic prowess were hallmarks of her character. In 1995, Tara graduated from Lovejoy High School, setting her on a path that would lead her to Georgia College in Milledgeville. There, she excelled, graduating cum laude in 1998, with not 1, but 2 bachelor's degrees. For those who knew her, Tara's decision to pursue law seemed a natural progression for a young woman with such promise. She had already proven herself capable of juggling multiple responsibilities, and her intellect and drive were evident to all who encountered her. As she embarked on her legal studies at the University of Georgia, there was a sense that Tara Louise Baker was destined for greatness. But destiny, it seems, had other plans. The events that unfolded on that fateful January night would not only end a life full of potential, but would also set in motion a mystery that would perplex law enforcement and haunt a community for years to come. The evening of January 18, 2001, began like many others for Tara. She was at the UGA Law Library, a place where she often burned the midnight oil, studying alongside one of her closest friends. By 7:30 p.m., her study partner had left, but Tara remained, determined to squeeze in more preparation time. At 9:46 p.m., Tara made what would become her final phone call. She reached out to the same friend she'd been studying with earlier, a thoughtful gesture to ensure her companion had arrived home safely. During this conversation, Tara mentioned her plans to wrap up her studies and head home around 10 p.m. The library was a mere 12-minute drive from her residence. It should have been a routine journey home, one Tara had likely made countless times before. But something went terribly wrong that night. The next morning, as Athens awakened to what should have been a day of celebration for Tara's 24th birthday, local firefighters instead received an alarming dispatch. At 11:23 a.m., they were called to respond to a house fire. The address given was Tara's home. Upon arrival at 11:28 a.m., firefighters were met with a chilling scene. Tara's white car was parked outside, a silent witness to the horror that had unfolded within. As they battled the flames and smoke, they made a grim discovery. Tara's body lay inside the burning house. The fire, as authorities would quickly determine, was no accident. It had been set intentionally, a cruel attempt to cover up an even more heinous crime. Tara hadn't simply perished in a house fire. She had been brutally beaten, stabbed, and strangled. The possibility of sexual assault also loomed, adding another layer of horror to an already unthinkable act. In the span of a few short hours, a promising young life had been violently extinguished, leaving behind a trail of questions that would perplex investigators for years to come. What had happened in those crucial hours between Tara's phone call and the discovery of her body? Who could have committed such a brutal act against a beloved member of the community? And perhaps most chillingly, why was there no sign of forced entry at Tara's home? As news of the tragedy spread, a pall fell over Athens. The birthday that should have been a joyous occasion for Tara and her loved ones instead marked the beginning of a long, painful journey for justice. The investigation into Tara's murder began immediately, but from the outset, it was fraught with challenges. The fire had not only taken Tara's life, but had also destroyed crucial evidence. Investigators were left to piece together a puzzle, with many of its pieces charred beyond recognition. The day after the discovery of Tara's body, an autopsy was conducted by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. However, in a move that would later prove controversial, the results were not shared with Tara's family. This lack of transparency would become a point of contention and frustration for the Bakers as they sought answers about their daughter's final moments. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the case seemed to stall. Despite the brutality of the crime and the shock it had sent through the community, solid leads were hard to come by. The lack of forced entry suggested that Tara might have known her attacker, but this theory only served to widen the pool of potential suspects rather than narrow it. Law enforcement remained tight-lipped about many aspects of the investigation, a strategy they believed would protect the integrity of the case. However, this silence also bred speculation and frustration among the public and Tara's loved ones. Years passed, and Tara's case grew cold, but for her family and friends, the pain remained as fresh as the day they lost her. Virginia Baker, Tara's mother, became a tireless advocate for her daughter, refusing to let Tara's memory or the search for justice fade away. It wasn't until 2020, nearly 2 decades after Tara's death, that a breakthrough of sorts occurred. The Classic City Crime podcast released a series of 24 episodes dedicated to Tara's case. This renewed public interest had an unexpected consequence. It finally led to the Baker family receiving Tara's autopsy report, a document they had been seeking for 19 years. While the release of the autopsy report provided some answers, it also raised new questions. The details contained within only served to underscore the brutality of the crime and the urgent need for justice. But still, the identity of Tara's killer remained elusive. On April 29, 2023, more than 22 years after Tara's murder, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp signed the Coleman-Baker Act into law. This legislation, named in honor of Tara Louise Baker and another cold case victim, Rhonda Coleman, marked a significant step forward in the fight for justice for cold case victims across the state. The Coleman-Baker Act allocated $5.4 million to aid in solving cold case homicides by establishing a dedicated unit within the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. This new initiative brought hope not only to Tara's family, but to countless others who had been waiting years for answers and closure. Investigators revisited Tara's case with fresh eyes and new resources. They re-examined old evidence, re-interviewed witnesses, and applied modern forensic techniques to samples that had been preserved for over 2 decades. Then, on May 13, 2023, came the breakthrough that Tara's family, friends, and the entire Athens community had been waiting for. State and county investigators announced the arrest of 48-year-old Edric Lamont Faust, a resident of Athens, in connection with Tara's murder. Faust faced a litany of charges, including felony murder, aggravated assault, arson, and aggravated sodomy. The arrest was a testament to the power of perseverance and the advancements in forensic science. Investigators revealed that biological evidence and DNA had played a crucial role in identifying Faust as the alleged perpetrator. As news of the arrest spread, a mix of emotions swept through those who had followed Tara's case for so long. There was relief that a suspect had finally been apprehended, but also a renewed sense of grief as the community was forced to confront the brutal details of Tara's final moments once again. For the Baker family, the arrest brought a complex blend of emotions. While it represented a significant step towards justice, it also dredged up painful memories and unanswered questions. Why had Faust allegedly targeted Tara? Had they known each other? And perhaps most hauntingly, what had transpired in those final hours of Tara's life?
Today is not necessarily a celebration, but it is certainly a moment of gratitude, right? Because this is the first step in justice for Tara, which is exactly what we've been advocating for.
The arrest and subsequent legal process brought a measure of closure. But for those who knew and loved Tara, the pain of her loss remained. As legal proceedings continue, as new details potentially come to light, and as her legacy continues to inspire change, we are reminded that the pursuit of justice is an ongoing process. It's a pursuit that requires dedication, resources, and an unwavering commitment to uncovering the truth, no matter how long it takes. Rest in peace. In the fall of 1987, a serial killer stalked the streets of Richmond, Virginia. Over the course of just a few months, he would claim the lives of 4 women, leaving a trail of brutality in his wake. But the story of the Southside Strangler began years earlier, with a murder that would lead to a grave miscarriage of justice. It was January 1984 when 32-year-old Carolyn Hamm was found dead in her Arlington home. She had been bound and hanged in her garage. Police quickly arrested a local man named David Vasquez for the crime. He was convicted and sentenced to 35 years in prison. But Vasquez was innocent. The real killer was still out there, and he was just getting started. 3 years later, in September 1987, 35-year-old Debbie Davis was found murdered in her Richmond apartment. She had been strangled with a ligature and left naked on her bed. Just 2 weeks after that, Dr. Susan Helms was discovered dead in her home, also raped and strangled. Richmond had a serial killer on its hands, but the killer wasn't done. In November, he struck again, this time claiming 15-year-old Deanna Cho as his youngest victim. And then, just days later, 44-year-old Susan Tucker was found murdered in Arlington. The press dubbed him the Southside Strangler. Fear gripped the community as police raced to catch the killer before he could strike again. The break in the case came in January 1988, when police arrested 25-year-old Timothy Wilson Spencer. A convicted burglar, Spencer had been staying at a halfway house near the scenes of the Richmond murders. But it would take a groundbreaking new forensic technique to definitively link him to the crimes. As investigators dug into Spencer's background, a disturbing pattern emerged. Born in 1962, he had a troubled upbringing in Arlington, Virginia. Those who knew him spoke of a deep-seated hatred for women that seemed to simmer just beneath the surface. But it was science that would ultimately seal Spencer's fate. For the first time in U.S. history, prosecutors turned to an emerging technology called DNA fingerprinting to build their case. In July 1988, Spencer went on trial for the murder of Susan Tucker. The prosecution presented DNA evidence linking him to the crime scene, a revolutionary moment in American jurisprudence. The jury found him guilty, and Spencer was sentenced to death. But this was just the beginning. Over the next year, Spencer would face trial for the murders of Debbie Davis and Susan Helms. In each case, DNA evidence played a crucial role, and in each case, the result was the same: guilty with a sentence of death. As news of Spencer's convictions spread, investigators began to re-examine unsolved cases from years past. They soon made a chilling discovery. DNA evidence linked Spencer to the 1984 murder of Carolyn Hamm, the very crime for which David Vasquez had been wrongfully convicted. On January 4, 1989, after serving 5 years for a murder he didn't commit, David Vasquez was granted an unconditional pardon. He became the first American to be exonerated based on DNA evidence, the same technology that had put his would-be killer behind bars. As for Timothy Spencer, his appeals were denied. On April 27, 1994, he was executed by electric chair at Greensville Correctional Center. He offered no final words, taking the full extent of his crimes to the grave. Timothy Spencer's reign of terror was over, but its impact on forensic science and criminal investigations would be felt for decades to come. While the brutal murders of 1987 shocked Richmond to its core, Timothy Spencer was no stranger to law enforcement. Long before he became known as the Southside Strangler, Spencer had carved out a reputation as a prolific home burglar. Spencer's criminal career didn't start with murder. He was well known to local police for his skill at breaking and entering. This background in burglary would prove crucial to his later crimes, allowing him to slip in and out of victims' homes undetected. Indeed, at the time of the Richmond murders, Spencer was residing at a halfway house, having recently been released after serving time for a 1984 burglary conviction. This placement put him in chilling proximity to his victims. Looking back, we can see how Spencer's burglary skills evolved into something far more sinister. He used the same techniques to enter homes, but now with a much darker purpose. This history of break-ins not only helped Spencer commit his murders, but also initially masked them as part of a broader pattern of home invasions, complicating early stages of the investigation. In a twisted way, Spencer's background as a burglar made him a more efficient killer. He knew how to move silently, how to bypass security measures. It's a chilling example of how criminal behaviors can escalate over time. As the bodies piled up and fear gripped Richmond, one detective would prove instrumental in bringing the Southside Strangler to justice. His name was Joe Horus, and his relentless pursuit of the killer would ultimately crack the case wide open. Detective Horus, an investigator with the Arlington County Police Department, began to notice similarities between the murders in Richmond and the killing of Susan Tucker in Arlington. Despite jurisdictional boundaries, he pushed for a collaborative investigation. Horus's breakthrough came when he linked Spencer's movements between Richmond and Arlington to the timing of the murders. This crucial connection led to Spencer's arrest in January 1988. Without Detective Horus's persistence, who knows how long Spencer might have continued killing. His work was absolutely pivotal. But Horus's role didn't end with the arrest. He worked tirelessly with prosecutors to build a case that would stand up in court, including the groundbreaking use of DNA evidence. Detective Joe Horus's dedication to the case not only brought a serial killer to justice, but also helped usher in a new era of forensic science in criminal investigations. The case of the Southside Strangler didn't just make headlines, it left an indelible mark on popular culture, inspiring a wave of books, television shows, and documentaries. Perhaps the most notable literary work to draw from the case was Patricia Cornwell's best-selling novel Post Mortem, published in 1990. Cornwell, who had worked as a computer analyst in the Richmond Medical Examiner's office during Spencer's killing spree, used her insider knowledge to craft a gripping thriller. While she maintained that she wrote about types of crimes rather than specific cases, the similarities to the Southside Strangler murders were unmistakable. The case also found its way onto the small screen. In 1996, the forensic science documentary series Medical Detectives devoted an entire episode to Spencer's crimes and capture. The show highlighted the groundbreaking use of DNA evidence, introducing a wider audience to this revolutionary forensic tool. In 2003, the Discovery Channel's The New Detectives featured the case in an episode titled Random Targets. Though the victims' names were changed, the details of Spencer's brutal crimes were laid bare for viewers. More recently, the case has been revisited in true crime podcasts and documentaries, cementing its place in the annals of American criminal history. When prosecutors decided to use DNA evidence against Spencer, they were treading on new legal ground. The significance of this decision cannot be overstated. In each of Spencer's trials, for the murders of Susan Tucker, Debbie Davis, and Susan Helms, DNA evidence played a crucial role. Prosecutors presented genetic profiles extracted from crime scene evidence and compared them to Spencer's DNA, demonstrating matches that were virtually impossible to occur by chance. This use of DNA evidence not only secured Spencer's convictions, but also set a precedent that would transform the American justice system. It opened the door for wider acceptance and use of genetic evidence in courtrooms across the country. Moreover, the case highlighted DNA's power not just to convict the guilty, but also to exonerate the innocent. If you're a fan of true crime, cold cases, and the unsolved, hit that like and subscribe button for more chilling cases like those told in today's video. As always, be alert and never stop searching for the truth.